Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a truly fascinating chapter that takes us on a journey from the everyday services you use on your morning commute all the way up to the invisible, high-speed networks that literally power the entire global economy. We're going to discover exactly how human skills, rather than physical raw materials, have become the real, undisputed engine of modern wealth.
Okay, let's dive into this. For centuries, right, economic progress was strictly measured by what we could physically produce. We farmed the land, we mined the earth, we built massive factories. But what happens when a society actually moves past that? What happens when the majority of us stop making physical things and start providing human services instead? Well, we enter a massive, largely invisible, and incredibly complex new world.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, the rise of services. Then, trade, transport, and communication. After that, the global tourism boom. Fourth, the knowledge economy. And finally, the digital divide. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the rise of services, moving beyond the factory.
So stepping beyond the factory floor, we enter what economists call tertiary activities. And this is a massive, fundamental shift for any society. As an economy develops, workers naturally leave the farms and factories to provide commercial services instead. The crucial aha moment here is that economic value now comes from specialized human skills, not heavy machinery. Whether you're hiring a plumber to fix a leak, visiting a doctor, or taking a class just like this one, you are actively consuming a tertiary activity.
Moving right along to Section 2, trade, transport, and communication, overcoming distance.
Now, these services don't just exist in a vacuum, right? They absolutely need networks to connect them, and this brilliantly illustrates how geography actually shapes these networks. Take a rural wholesale market, for instance. They're often completely transient, moving around periodically just to meet the scattered demands of surrounding villages. But contrast that with a highly specialized urban food market in the US. Urban density allows for fixed, permanent establishments, offering incredibly specific goods directly to consumers day in and day out.
Of course, to connect these markets, we need transport. But here is a really interesting insight. Distance isn't just a simple straight line drawn on a map. When experts design global networks, they measure distance in three very distinct ways. There's kilometer distance, which is the actual physical route length. Then there's time distance, which is simply how fast you can travel it. And finally, cost distance, the actual financial expense of moving. By tweaking and manipulating these three metrics across various nodes and links, we build the complex networks that dictate exactly how fast and how cheap our modern world operates.
And, sometimes the most incredible, efficient networks rely entirely on sheer human labor. Case in point, Mumbai's famous Dabawala service. It's a personal delivery service utilizing largely unskilled labor migrating in from rural areas. Yet, every single day, without fail, they deliver home-cooked meals to nearly 175,000 customers across a wildly chaotic city. Through a perfectly synchronized, completely low-tech system of nodes and links, they operate with a staggering efficiency that honestly rivals modern tech companies.
Let's scale things up in Section 3, the global tourism boom, the world's largest service. Now, what happens when we take those personal services in transport networks and we scale them up to a global level? Well, you get a staggering number, 250 million. Just let that breathe for a second. That is the number of registered jobs in the global tourism industry. Travel for recreation has quietly become the world's single largest tertiary activity. It accounts for a massive 40% of total global GDP, fostering everything from tiny local craft markets to massive multi-billion-dollar infrastructure projects.
And the real engine driving this massive boom is geography itself. Landscape and climate act like giant, irresistible magnets. Millions of people literally flee the cold for warm Mediterranean beaches, while simultaneously, tourists with totally different requirements flock to the snow-capped mountain slopes of Switzerland. We are literally transforming a region's natural environment and local culture into a highly lucrative service economy.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what happens when international travel merges with highly specialized personal services. It's a massive trend known as medical tourism. For instance, the data shows that back in 2005, roughly 55,000 patients traveled from the US all the way to India specifically for medical treatment. By developing world-class metropolitan hospitals, countries like India, Thailand, and Singapore have tapped into an incredibly lucrative market, offering global patients the huge benefit of outsourced, high-end healthcare.
Which brings us to Section 4, the knowledge economy, information as currency.
That whole idea of outsourcing specialized skills naturally leads us up to the macro level, where we leave physical services behind entirely. Welcome to quaternary activities. These are advanced services where information itself is the currency. Think software developers, fund managers, or tax consultants. If you work in an office setting, chances are you're in this exact knowledge sector, which amazingly now employs over half of all workers in developed economies.
And right at the very pinnacle of this knowledge economy sits what we call quaternary activities. This top tier focuses purely on creating and interpreting brand new ideas and technologies. These are your top-level decision makers, the senior executives, policymakers, and high-level research scientists. They're often referred to as gold-collar professionals. And it turns out, while their actual headcount is tiny, their influence over the structure of our advanced global economy is absolutely massive.
Because these knowledge workers aren't tied down to physical factories, their roles can theoretically be outsourced anywhere in the world. So the crucial point is the vital distinction in exactly what is being outsourced. On one hand, you have business process outsourcing, or BPO. Think IT and customer support, which is driven purely by cutting costs and finding cheaper labor. But on the other hand, you have knowledge process outsourcing, or KPO. This is outsourcing things like R&D, legal consulting, and intellectual property research. KPO isn't just about saving a buck, it's about actively creating brand new global business opportunities.
Let's bring it all home with Section 5, the digital divide, the uneven network.
A globalized knowledge economy sounds great, but it creates a very unique geography of winners and losers. We call this the digital divide. Basically, it refers to the deeply uneven distribution of information and communication technology. While developed nations surge forward with the high-speed access that's absolutely required for those lucrative knowledge sectors we just talked about, developing countries and even rural areas within wealthy nations seriously lag behind. And here's the harsh reality. Without a plug-in to the network, entire populations are simply isolated from modern wealth.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly important thought to ponder. We've just seen how our economy evolved from making physical things to providing personal services to trading pure ideas. But what happens to the global economy when high-speed connectivity completely dictates who thrives and who is left behind? If information really is the new currency, access to the network is quite literally the only way to earn it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it sparked your curiosity to look a little closer at the invisible networks shaping our entire world. See you next time.